Hello, my name is Carrie Brown and I am with the Central Mississippi Regional Library System. Today I'm going to be reading to you chapters 1 and 2 of Calendar Mysteries, July Jitters. Written by Ron Roy, illustrated by John Stephen Gurney, published by Random House, New York. Chapter 1. Pet Contest. Can you guess who I am? Mr. Verret asked the students in his first grade class. He was wearing a white wig with a ponytail tied with a ribbon. On top of the wig sat a hat with 3 corners. He wore short pants showing long white socks. Shiny buckles decorated the tops of his shoes. Elvis Presley? Nate Hathaway asked. Mr. Verret shook his head. I'm a king, but not the king of rock and roll, he said, grinning. Anyone else have a guess? King Tut? Brian Pinto said. Everyone laughed. Wrong period of history, Mr. Verret said, and King Tut was 9 years old when he became king. Do I look that young? It was the last day of school and warm in the classroom. Because of snow days, school was letting out late this year. A fan sat on Mr. Verret's desk, but it didn't do much good. The windows were open, but there was no breeze. Give us a hint, one boy called out. Okay, I will, said Mr. Verret. He pulled out a stack of play money off the math shelf. He handed it to Bradley Pinto, who sat in the first row. Pass it out and make sure everyone gets some, Bradley. Bradley walked down the rows, giving play paper money to all the kids. Does everyone have money? Mr. Verret asked when Bradley was back in his seat. But it's fake, Brian Pinto said. We can't buy anything with it. Pretend, Mr. Verret said. Then he pulled out a box of prizes off the game shelf. Lucy, do you want to come up here and buy something with your money? Lucy Armstrong walked to the front of the class. She looked in the box. Can I buy those stickers? She asked. Certainly, Mr. Verret said. That will be $1, please. Lucy handed him a fake dollar. And $10 tax, please, Mr. Verret added. $10 tax? Lucy said. That's a lot. Do you want the stickers, Lucy? Mr. Verret asked. I guess so, Lucy said. She gave him $10 more and took the stickers back to her seat. You got robbed, Nate told her. Has anyone guessed which king I am? Said Mr. Verret. King Robber, Brian said, and everyone laughed again. I am King George III, Mr. Verret said. Who's he? Nate asked. He ruled Great Britain back in the 1700s, Mr. Verret explained. That included the American colonies. A lot of the king's subjects didn't think he was a very good king. For one thing, he taxed them way too much, just like I taxed Lucy too much. Even though the people in the colonies paid high taxes, they didn't have anyone to represent them in the British government. They had made a new life for themselves. They had built homes, worked on farms, and started families. But even from far away, King George still tried to rule them. How could he do that? Lucy asked. He was a very powerful king, Mr. Verret said. He had lots of money, ships, and men who could cross the ocean and keep an eye on the colonists. Finally, the colonists had had enough of King George. They decided to break away from his power. In 1776, they asked Thomas Jefferson to write a paper explaining why it was a good idea to declare independence from King George. We call this paper the Declaration of Independence. Hey, I saw that! Scott yelled out. It's in Washington, D.C., right, Mr. Verret? Yes, but the original is quite faded and almost impossible to read, the teacher said. Remember, it was written almost 240 years ago. But if it was so long ago, why do we have parades and fireworks on July 4th? A girl named Sue asked. When the colonists separated from the king to form the United States, they celebrated, Mr. Verret explained. And we still celebrate every July 4th. Everyone wants to remember the importance of Independence Day. Are you going to the parade? Bradley asked. I wouldn't miss it, the teacher said. I'm going to enter my parrot Patrick in the mayor's pet contest. What contest? Brian asked. It's the mayor's idea, Mr. Verret said. Before the real parade starts, there will be a pet parade. The mayor wants people to bring their pets dressed as someone from 1776. The winner gets a prize. It costs $1 to enter a pet, and the money goes to the food pantry. What's the prize? A boy named Seth asked. The owner of the winning pet gets to be mayor for a day, Mr. Verret said. Pretty cool, right? You mean, like, sit in the mayor's office all day? Jackie asked. Mr. Verret grinned. You'd also get to drive around in his shiny black car and eat lunch in his favorite restaurant, he said. Plus, you'd be on TV. The local TV station will be filming the whole thing. On TV? A bunch of kids yelled. They all started chattering about how they would dress their cats, hamsters, and canaries. Way cool, Brian said. We can enter our dog. If he wins, I get to be mayor. But we both own Pal, Bradley said. If Pal wins, we both get to be mayor, right, Mr. Verret? Mr. Verret smiled. I think my parrot is going to win, he said. Chapter 2. Bradley has an idea. The next day was July 1st. Bradley, Brian, Nate, and Lucy were in the Pinto's barn where it was cool. They were sitting on bales of hay. Pigeons made cooing noises in the roof rafters over their heads. The 4 kids were best buddies. The twins' older brother Josh was friends with Nate's sister Ruth Rose, and Lucy's cousin Dink Duncan. Lucy was visiting from California. She was staying with Dink's family while her parents were helping to build a Native American school in Arizona. Bradley had a pad of paper and a pencil. Okay, we need some ideas for how to dress Pal, he said. I want to be mayor for a day. Pal was licking the edge of the pad. Lucy was sitting next to Pal. Do you want to be in the 4th of July parade? She asked him. Pal woofed a doggy yes. Are you going to win first prize? Brian asked his dog. Pal woofed twice as loud. Come on, guys, we need ideas, Bradley said. Pal had long, droopy ears, sad brown eyes, and short legs. How about making Pal a moose? Nate asked. I have some antlers from a Halloween costume. That would look silly, Lucy said. Besides, moose have long legs. We could dress Pal as a cowboy and have him ride Polly in the parade, Brian suggested, like Roy Rogers and Trigger. Polly, the Pinto's pony, was in her stall at the other end of the barn. Bradley laughed at his brother's suggestion. They both hate it, he said. But you gave me an idea. I did? Asked Brian. Bradley nodded. Yep. Just think, if we entered both Pal and Polly, we'd have 2 chances to win, he said. That's what I just said, Brian stated. Pal can be a cowboy riding on Polly. Perfect. But it's a July 4th parade, Bradley said. They didn't have cowboys in 1776. What did they have? Nate asked. They had dinosaurs! Brian yelled. We can dress Pal as a stegosaurus and Polly as a pterodactyl. The other kids laughed, and Bradley threw some hay at his brother. They did not have dinosaurs in 1776, Bradley said. Besides, if we want to win, we need the costume to have something to do with Independence Day, Lucy said. Lucy's right, Bradley said. So we dress Polly as King George? Nate asked. He started laughing and rolling over in the hay. My idea, Bradley said, is to dress Polly as Thomas Jefferson, and Pal goes as the Declaration of Independence. Brian stared at his brother. I don't get it, he said. Bri, Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence, Bradley said. Pal and Polly will be perfect, and it stays with the theme of the parade. We could win. Lucy looked at Pal. I think that's a great idea, she said. But how do we make Pal look like a sheet of paper? I know, Nate said. I'll ask my sister to find a copy of the Declaration of Independence on our computer and print it out. Then we tie it on Pal's back like a cape. Brian grinned. What about Polly? He asked. Thomas Jefferson had only 2 legs, and he wore pants. How do we make Polly look like him? Easy, Bradley said. We forgot her hind legs. We put a wig on her head with one of those funny hats with the 3 corners. Like Mr. Voray was wearing yesterday? Lucy put in. Right, Bradley said. We can make some buckles and tape them to Polly's front hooves. It'll be so cool. Everyone will know who she's supposed to be, and we'll win the prize. I'll be mayor for a day. No, we will, Brian said. We can each be half a mayor. Not so fast, Nate said. There are 4 of us here, so we each get to be a 4th of a mayor. I want to be his fingers so I can count all his money. I'll be his feet so I can drive his car, Bradley said. I hear the mayor likes to eat ice cream, Brian said. I'll be his stomach. How about you, Lucy? Bradley asked. I'll be the mayor's brain, she said. Then I can control all of you guys. Thank you. Be sure to tune in next week for chapters 3 and 4. Goodbye.